Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. And thank you for being here for our opening session of the End of Seeking Conference. My name is Bill Free. I'm the founder of Pure Presence Conferences and your host for several of your sessions. It is my honor and my joy to be opening with Rupert Spira again. This is our sixth conference, and Rupert has just, and this isn't by design, he's been our opening conference speaker for all six conferences. And I'm grateful for this guy. I want to say that Rupert Spira, even though I've been on the spiritual path of some at some level since I was 27 years old, it was when I met Rupert that I can honestly say that the end of seeking occurred. And I am grateful for his pointing by that. And it doesn't mean that he's got the magic. He does have the piece that I was missing. He did have, and still does. And similar to his, if you know Rupert, he tells you that he was searching for 20 years, and then when he met Francis, he also then knew that he'd found what he was looking for. And in my mind, that is the end of seeking. And it's my joy to have Rupert to play that role for many of us. Many of you are here because of this guy's pointing. And Rupert is his session, as you know, many of you do know Rupert, but some of you don't know. I'll just say that the name of his session is, or the title is The Direct Path to Peace and Happiness. And if we can close those mics, that would be great. I appreciate turning. If you could mute your mic, if you know that it's open when you come in, that would be a big help to us. And Rupert explores. Where's that mic coming from? Do we still have the open mic? Okay, good. Thanks. Rupert explores the perennial non-dual understanding that lies at the heart of all the great religious and spiritual traditions, such as Advaita, Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism, Hinduism, Buddhism, mystical Christianity, Sufism, Zen, etc. And he is he's the piece that he might be the piece for you, for this, for you to have to come to the point of the end of seeking. My hope is that someone in this conference will be that for you. And thank you, Rupert, for being here. I really appreciate you being the part of this conference, and welcome.
Not at all, Bill. Thank you very much, as always, for asking me, and it's lovely to be with you all.
Well, Rupert, I'm going to start off by asking you. You know, I gave a word on what the end of seeking is for me. It was that other piece for that completed my understanding, so that I could realize that I wasn't seeking anymore. But after that, I wasn't finished either. The end of seeking doesn't mean that you're done. Everything's okay. Close. You know, you can close the book. You can stop going to the teachers, but it's probably not the best time. It's almost like awakening starts right there, and then you move through life with this sort of gathering the rest of the pieces. Now that you have a clear understanding of your essential nature, you then you're still on a discovery. I would like to hear from you what the end of seeking implies on different levels for different people. If you would share from that, and then, of course, I know we'll open it up for questions.
Well, the end of seeking implies that our search for peace and happiness in the objective content of experience has come to an end. When I say the objective content of experience, I mean in objects, substances, activities, states of mind, relationships, and so on. Everybody, not just those relatively few of us interested in spiritual matters, but all 7.8 billion of us are seeking peace and happiness above all else. And the vast majority of us seek it in objective experience. And the reason we are all here at this conference is precisely because our search for peace and happiness in the realm of objective experience has been frustrated often enough to make us begin to question whether or not happiness can ever really be provided by objective experience. And this the great search for peace and happiness comes to an end when we discover that the very nature of the being that we always and already are is that very peace or happiness. So this doesn't mean, as you implied in your intro, that our interaction with the outside world, with activities, with people, and so on, comes to an end. But it does imply that we cease using objects, substances, particularly activities and relationships, for the purpose of finding happiness. We have found the source of happiness inside ourselves as our very own being. And what remains then is to align the way we think and feel, and the way we act, perceive, and relate with this new understanding. So as you rightly say, Bill, this recognition of the nature of our being as peace and happiness is the end of one chapter, but it is the beginning of another, and the next chapter is a never-ending chapter.
How would you suggest someone knows that they're awake? And they may not know it, but how would you suggest someone have an investigation, a litmus test to know if that is occurring?
When you say awake, Bill, do you mean that they have recognized their true nature, or that they are aware, or what
Yes.
do you mean by
Yeah, that they have recognized their true nature. Maybe it's not familiar enough to them to know for sure, but how would someone know that they have realized their essential nature?
Bill, it's best never to make the claim that one has realized one's true nature. A more, to me, a more relevant question would be, how do we know that we're at peace and happy? And the answer is, of course, that happiness is its own evidence. It doesn't need to be proved by something else. You ask the question, how can we know whether we're awake? We know that we're awake because of X, Y, and Z. In other words, so-called being awake is, in this context, can be proved by something else. But I don't recommend that we try to prove that for ourselves. The real question is, am I at peace? Am I fulfilled? Or is there still a sense of lack in me that I am almost continually, in one way or another, trying to fulfill through objective experience? That's the real question. Am I at peace? Has this burning fire of desire in me come to an end? Or am I still restless inside, seeking just something, one more teacher, one more method, one more relationship, one more whatever it is that will finally give us the peace and the joy for which we long? That's the real question.
Well, you just busted my bubble nicely.
I didn't mean to, Bill. I'm sorry. I don't mean
No,
to be
I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
confrontational.
Yeah, I know that. And what's cool is, I mean, when you're describing, the peace, I find zeal and excitement and enthusiasm to be the thing that has replaced the seeking.
Yes,
And
but exactly, Bill. So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's beautiful, Bill, because there, the zeal, the excitement, that is not the restlessness and the agitation that comes from the sense of lack. That's another kind of restlessness, the restlessness of creativity, of enthusiasm, that comes from a sense of fullness, a sense of fullness that seeks to share itself, a sense of fullness that is overflowing in you and wants to express itself and share itself and communicate itself in the world. That is a kind of restlessness. It involves thinking and acting and relating, but it doesn't come from the sense of lack. And it can even, it does entail desire. You had a desire to initiate this conference. That was a desire, but it wasn't a desire that came from the sense of lack. It's a desire that comes from your love, your joy, your enthusiasm at wanting to share this understanding with other people. So again, when I said earlier that one knows whether one is at peace because this fire of desire has come to an end. What I meant was the fire of desire that comes from a sense of lack, a sense that something is missing. When that has come to an end, but there may very well remain a different kind of desire, which is just the joy to express love, understanding, and beauty in one way or another. It's creativity. Creative people are restless because they're always wanting to express the inexpressible, but it's it's a sort of divine restlessness.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. And for those of you that have questions for Rupert, please use the raise hand feature. And we've turned the chat off so that there's more of a focus on the teaching and not the chat. So we'll appreciate if you have a question. You can for Rupert, you can still put it in the chat. It'll come to myself or Susan. And we appreciate you following that protocol. And we'll begin to take questions if you use the raise hand feature. Melanie?
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm in a dark room, but it's 5 a.m. here in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for putting on this conference. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to know, how important is community in the kind of awakening process? If you start to find yourself not relating so much to those around you, and sometimes that creates a little bit of friction, or you're not really seeing things on the same way that you once were, how important is it to have a community around you of like-minded people?
Melanie, I would say it was very important. that there are a few rare individuals who can go off into a cave, if not a physical cave, a metaphorical cave in solitude, and explore this understanding, recognize their true nature on their own. But the vast majority of people, it's very helpful, more than helpful, almost essential to have a community of like-minded people around one. In Buddhism, they have a phrase that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the teacher, the teaching, and the community of friends that gather around the teaching. These are the three vehicles of the understanding, the three ways the understanding communicates itself. And so I would say that the community of friends is very important.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that we're not doing any type of spiritual escapism when you form that community, because I still am very much part of the world, working, raising a family, all those things. So it sounds like you have to find a fine balance between community and participation in the world, or how does that work?
Yes, there's absolutely no conflict, Melanie, between the exploration of these matters, the recognition of your true nature, the expression of this understanding in your everyday life, and a full life in the world. Some of you know of the sage Atmananda Krishna, who, when asked what were the best circumstances for spiritual practice and investigation, he said the army or the police force. Well, he was a police officer, which is why he answered in that way. When people ask me that question, I say marriage, 2 kids, and a full-time job. So if you have a family and you have a full life in the world, then those are the ideal circumstances for this exploration. And of course, I do not mean to imply that those of you who are not married, who don't have a family and don't have a full-time job, are in any way disadvantaged. Of course not. Really, the best circumstances for this exploration are the circumstances in which each of us finds ourselves. So no, Melanie, there's absolutely nothing incompatible with this, the exploration of this understanding or the expression of this understanding with a fully engaged life in the world, whatever that means for you, including children, family, work, and so on.
Thank you.
Johns, would you please turn your video on and unmute your mic? Thank you.
Hi, Rupert. Thank you. I was brought up Catholic. I've always believed in God. Obviously, he's there, but I don't know him. You know, I can love a wife, I can love children, I can love a pet, but how do you love God when you don't know him? You know, I was taught to know and love God in this world, be happy with him forever in the next. But how do you know him?
Johns, you know the experience of love.
With people, yes.
Well, no, but just the experience of love. You know what love is. You know, because you told us you love your friends, your family. So you know the experience of love.
Right.
That is God.
Okay. Sounds very simple, but
Okay.
One doesn't get a sense of it still. I still don't feel that I know him. So you're saying it's me, myself, loving.
Johns, it is not possible for an individual to know God, because an individual can only know something that stands apart from their self. For the same reason, your eyes cannot see themselves.
Right.
It's only possible for the eyes to see something that stands at a distance from them. Now,
right.
the individual self can only know something that it stands apart from. So if God were something that stood apart from the individual and was thus other than the individual, then God would be finite. And if God were finite, God would not be God.
Right.
So, John, tell us about your being.
Well, I just am.
Perfect. Tell us more about it.
Well, I'm often feeling, what the hell am I doing here? I don't know.
Now you're, as soon as you say, sometimes I'm feeling, you stop telling us about your being and you start telling us about your feelings. So
Right.
we don't want to know about your feelings. We want to know about you, your being, the one to whom you refer when you say I am, before you say I am feeling such and such, or I am thinking of such and such. So just tell us about your being. When I asked you, first of all, about your being, you said, I just am.
Well,
Beautiful.
exactly.
Tell us
I'm
more
present.
about presence. Perfect. Tell us more.
There's really not much more to say. I just am. Stuff
Okay.
is happening around. I'm aware of it.
Yes. Yeah. No, don't go into that. That's the other stuff. We want to know about your being. Now, you say, I can't say anything else about it. You're quite right. Why not?
I don't feel a need to. Sorry, feeling, but yeah, I don't need to.
You don't need to, but I know you don't need to, but why can't you describe your being? You're quite right, by the way.
I can't see it.
Perfect. You can't see it. You can't know it objectively.
Right.
And therefore, if you can't see it and you can't know it objectively, you cannot be aware of any limitations in it. Because a limitation would be something that you could see or know.
Right.
So when you say I can't see it, by which you mean I can't know it objectively, if you were to state that positively, it would be like saying, because my being is unlimited, it has no limit that I can know.
Right.
So what you're saying really is that my being is utterly intimate, but at the same time unlimited.
And yet I feel very limited.
No, you're going into feelings again, John.
Yeah.
I don't mind what you feel. I'm trying to find out what you are. And you have said quite rightly, I am, and there is no limit in myself.
Right.
Okay. So what you've said is that your being is utterly intimate, but unlimited. And being unlimited, it cannot share any of the limited qualities of a person, because any personal qualities would limit it, but you've already acknowledged that you cannot find any limits in your being. So what you've stated without using these particular words is that my being is utterly innermost and yet impersonal and infinite. Well, that's God's being. That is God's being, intimate, infinite, impersonal being. And the reason you can't know God's being is because God's being is too close to you. God's being is, it's not even too close to you as if there was your being and his being. There is only God's being. That there is no other being in you. John does not have his own being. John's being is God's being, the only being there is. You're looking too far away from yourself. You're looking out there at a distance from yourself, and not surprisingly, you're saying, I can't see him anywhere. I can't find him anywhere. No, you're right. You never will.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to connect and one can't because
no,
one is.
You cannot. If I were to say to you, Johns, stand up and try to connect with your body, what would you do?
Well, I'm already connected or with
it. You're not even connected to it. You are it at a relative level. You cannot connect with something that you already are. You can only connect with something that you are not yet connected with. But the other people, other objects, but the you that you keep referring to The I, when you say I am, that is God's being.
So it's
Temporarily.
complete.
Well, when I asked you about your being, you just said, I just am. And then there's no limitation. If there are no limitations in it, how could there be anything, how could there be any lack in it if there were nothing in it to limit it?
So all the sense of lack should just be discarded and ignored.
Well, it's not even that it need be discarded. It's that when you recognize that your being is God's being or is infinite, impersonal being, the sense of lack just falls away. You don't need even to practice discarding it. You just realize the being that I am is this fullness of God's being, and there is no lack in it.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Johnson.
And you, Rupert. Thank you very much.
Tucker, could you please? Oh, thank you for fixing your lighting. Unmute your mic, please.
Are you on with me now, Tucker?
W. Tucker. Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Whatever logarithm got me into this wonderful conference, and I'm seeing that there are 564 people participating with Rupert Spira. So enough with my accolades, but I just was wonderfully unaware of Rupert Spira until today. And the one question that I have, believe it or not, that I come down to is that you seem like from the introduction by Bill that you have really done the whole route of all these different disciplines and pursuits and spiritual journeys. And I'm at the stage now, I'm 77 years old in a nursing home. And I just really have found myself wonderfully full of all these things, whether it's Mind Valley, Conversations with God, the Shift Network, this program, A Course in Miracles. I spent 3 years.
Tucker, I'm gonna interrupt you.
Here's my
Tucker.
question.
Tucker, yeah. If you get to a question, we have a lot of people that would like to ask a question. Thank you.
I spent 3 years in Nepal, and I just wonder whether you've ever been reached a point where you're too full of knowledge of things that come in, or whether you welcome all the new things coming in. Thank you.
Tucker, my understanding, such as it is, has emptied me of knowledge. It has not filled me up with knowledge. So provisional knowledge comes to me when it is required for practical purposes, or when somebody asks me a question. Then a provisional formulation of the understanding in this context will come to me in response to the question. But that response doesn't come from a storehouse of knowledge that I have. I have no storehouse of knowledge. The knowledge just, the response just comes. It just comes spontaneously. Hopefully, it is sensitively tailored to the question and leads to understanding, not intellectual understanding, experiential understanding, and then when the conversation finishes, the knowledge evaporates. It goes back into the ocean. It loses its form, and the cup is empty again. And then when the next question,
a true beginner's mind,
yes. And then when the next question comes, I dip my cup into the ocean. It comes out with a formulation. We have a conversation, and then I empty it again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Tucker. And what a beautiful way to spend your days in the old people homes. Lovely to meet
you. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. David Rose. Rose.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill and Rupert. You probably don't remember me. I met you, spent a week with you in Tuscany many years ago, and just so lovely to see you again. And I just want to
see you again, David.
Want to say how grateful I am for your teachings and just incredible resources. It's just endless. My question is, I've sort of noticed in listening to you lately, the most recent invocation that you shared with us was really intimate and very beautiful. And yet I found myself asking the question, there is no sort of gap, there's no separation, there's no, when I'm saying praise be to thee, there's no thee. And so I'm looking at what praise really is in your experience and in our shared experience. It's a sort of, well, perhaps that's enough. Yeah.
Yes. David, if we were to speak in religious terminology, the spiritual path or process could be divided in two parts, and one part involves turning our attention away from the contents of experience and going inwards, selfwards. When thou prayest, enter into thy closet and close thy door, and when thou hast closed thy door, pray to thy Father who is in secret. This is a New Testament version of self-inquiry. To close thy door, turn off your sense perceptions, turn away from the world, enter into thy closet, enter into the depths of one's heart, and pray to thy Father who is in secret, the being where being is all alone, not secretive, but all alone. So this is the inward-facing path, and in religious terms, it's called prayer. In the Eastern traditions, it's referred to as meditation, or sometimes self-inquiry. But in religious terms, it's prayer. That this sinking into the depths of our being, and as we sink into being, our being loses the qualities that it borrows from the content of experience, and at some point stands revealed as infinite being, God's being. So that's the path of return, the inward-facing journey. Then the second stage is the outward-facing path, when we turn around again, and we then use all the faculties of our body and mind, the way we think and feel, the way we act, perceive and relate, in service of and as an expression of the qualities that we have now discovered to be the nature of our being, that is the nature of God's being, peace, joy, love, and so on. And in the religious tradition, this expression of these qualities in everyday life is called praise. So these are the two aspects. The inward-facing aspect is prayer. The outward-facing aspect, praise.
Beautiful. Mm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's one of the ways that I sort of feel this aliveness and this life as a prayer is in very mundane things, like playing golf. One of my teachers taught me the best way to improve your swing is to just as you're about to hit the ball, just feel the joy. This is exactly where I want to be, and just really, it's almost like praising the whole experience in the now.
Yes.
And I noticed that when I do that, the ball goes like a rocket, and it's such a lovely, simple feeling. So it can be. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just really going to affirm what you've just said, David. That this is true. That people in sports, musicians, people at all walks of life, that they report exactly the same. That when you are just totally in the moment, you're not acting for the sake of some future goal. Even if you're playing in a tournament and you want to win the tournament, but in the moment itself, there is there's nothing else present for you but the totality, with no sense of lack, no sense of desire. You're just totally at one with moment, and that is a moment of joy. That the joy is in the moment. It doesn't come at the end when you win the tournament. Yes, this would be a moment, an intervention of reality into our normal dualistic way of perceiving, when the seeking mind comes to an end and our current experience, however mundane it may be, is suffused with peace and joy. In religious terms, suffused with God's presence.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you again, David.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi, Rupert. Hi, Bill. Thank you for having me here.
Hello, Veronica.
I have a question. I am aware of my true nature, and there are moments I experience a lack of love. When I live alone, and when I'm in awareness, in consciousness, I am at peace. And there is a relationship that has ended, and the man likes to see me. And then I fall back in an old pattern, like I still want to receive his love. And I like to heal that part and be with him or not, but as awareness, as free of wanting to be fulfilled in that lack of love.
So, Bernie, can you formulate your question?
How can I heal my lack of love?
Okay.
If I experience that.
Yeah, okay. Veronique, the recognition of our true nature has two aspects to it. One relating to our inner experience and one relating to our outer experience. So you said earlier, I think you started by saying something like, I've recognized my true nature, its nature of peace. So that refers to the inner aspect. We recognize that the nature of the being that we essentially are is peace or joy. That relates to our inner experience. But there's a second aspect to this recognition, namely that the being that we essentially are is shared with everyone and everything. So it's not enough just to recognize the nature of my being on the inside is peace. We also have to recognize that the nature of our being is shared. It is universal. It is the being from which everyone and everything derives its existence. And that recognition, the recognition of our shared being, is the experience of love. So that's the important thing to feel. It has nothing to do with whether we like someone or not. Whether we like someone or not depends upon how well or not our conditioning chimes with theirs. But love has got nothing to do with the conditioning of the mind or the body. It is just the recognition of our shared being. So that's the important thing to know in your relationship with your companion. yes, there may be some healing to do at the level of your feelings and the level of your thoughts. But the love, that is the fact of your shared being, has not been touched by either by your coming together or by your separating. Well, that is the important thing to realize, that and that the love the being you share with him, you do not share it any more or less with him than you do with anybody else.
Yeah.
You may like him more than some other people or less than some other people. That's another matter. Love has nothing to do with whether we like someone or not. So the important thing to do is, in some ways, we impersonalize love. It doesn't mean to say that it becomes less intimate. On the contrary, it is the most intimate feeling, if we can call it a feeling, because it is the recognition of our innermost being is the innermost being of everyone and everything. So love is utterly intimate, but it's impersonal. That is the important thing to recognize. Don't let love become the hostage of your likes and dislikes.
Oh. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you, Veronique.
Acer?
Hello, Asa. Just wait one moment, you're still muted.
Yes, thank you. My name is Annemieke.
Ansika, okay.
Annemieke, coming from Anna Maria.
Annemieke, okay, Annemieke, yes. Hello,
Yes.
Annemieke.
Hi, Rupert. I'm questioning if, as soon as we recognize true nature, do we still work on concepts? I mean, we see them passing by, we experience them sometimes.
We see what passing by?
The concepts, all concepts we are relating on, or false.
Yes, we still use concepts, of course.
Yeah. And
It's necessary. Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, carry on with your question.
Like the false beliefs we have about ourselves, about so many things. And indeed concepts, but I mean like concepts about if I don't do that, I'm going to be ill or something like that. So there are so many false concepts. And do we work on them? Do we do something on them? Or is it enough to just see the concepts, see the false beliefs?
Okay. All right. Annemieke, the first thing is to make a clear distinction between concepts and beliefs.
Okay.
So concepts are necessary for practical, functional, creative, investigative purposes. And beliefs are not necessary. Concepts by themselves don't. They're not a sign of the overlooking of our true nature. They're not problematic. They don't get in the way of this investigation. But beliefs are problematic because they limit anything we believe about ourselves limits ourselves, and any limit on ourselves is a veiling of our true nature and thus a veiling of our innate peace and love. So beliefs are problematic, but concepts are not problematic. So that's the first thing. Distinguish between concepts and beliefs. The second question, which was your real question, do we work on these beliefs? And I would suggest no. When you open the curtains in your sitting room in the morning, you don't have to work on getting rid of the darkness before the light enters the room. No, the light enters the room and that takes care of the darkness.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. This understanding enters the the space of the dark room of your mind. Dark in this context means a mind that is full of beliefs, self-limiting beliefs. The light of understanding and love enter the darkness of our mind, and in most cases progressively floods it with its nature of love and understanding. The reason I say progressively is that our beliefs don't clear up overnight. It takes time for our old habits of thinking to realign themselves with this understanding. And it takes even longer for the habits of feeling. Not to mention acting, perceiving, and relating. So you don't have to work on your beliefs, but you cooperate. We can cooperate with the realigning of all aspects of our experience with this love and understanding. Nice to meet you, Annemieke.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
John, hello.
Hello. Really wonderful to speak with you, and thank you for doing this. It's much appreciated. I've been on the path for some 50 years, perhaps a little more. And I spent most of the time, or a great deal of the time, studying the yoga of Sri Aurobindo. Of late, I've discovered modern, more Western teachers and the awakening movement, I might call it, and have been quite actively pursuing that path for the last 2 years or so, to the point where it seems almost recommended that I drop some of the beliefs and move away from that tradition that I spent so much time studying and focus on technique like self-inquiry, trying to drop into the present moment. And I'm wondering what role, if any, it seems to be absent in most of that movement, the spiritual traditions that I spent so much time studying, and elements like devotion, which seem to not be present in this movement, right down to people, some teachers, I believe, like Shinzen Young, talking about using electronics to quiet the default mode network in your brain to allow spiritual experience. That's, I guess, the extreme of that lack of tradition. So I'm just wondering what role it plays, and should I, in my own practice, move on to this new focus of technique and drop all of that past learning and devotion that I had?
Okay. John, you've been exploring these matters a few years longer than I have. I first started exploring these matters about 45 years ago. So you've been going for even longer than I have. And like you, my exploration in various traditions, in the Vedantic tradition, the Sufi tradition in particular, brought me, after a number of years, to the direct path. This direct investigation into the nature of our being. And this is where your path has led you. And it's not been wasted. It led you to this point where you recognize that really what remains for you is to stop believing all sorts of things, stop practicing all sorts of things, and go directly to your being. So I would recommend, yes, don't think of this place where you have arrived as somehow a contradiction of your previous practice. On the contrary, it's the fulfillment of your practice. Your practice has taken you to the top of the mountain. You have one more step to take. And don't go back down the mountain with all those other practices. You've already climbed up the mountain. You have one step to take now. Go to your being. And this sinking deeply into being is the pinnacle, both of the jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, but it's also the pinnacle of the path of devotion. So don't feel that you have to abandon your previous devotion. On the contrary, consider that your devotional practice has been refined and upgraded by your current understanding. That this direct path that I speak of is the highest form of the path of devotion, because we are utterly devoted to that which truly is. And when we make this investigation into that which truly is, all we find is infinite aware being. So we are devotees here. Yes, we use the mind in this very clean, discriminating way. That's the way the mind is used on the path of knowledge, the path of jnana. But we are devotees here, devotees of truth, devotees of reality, or in religious terms, devotees of God. It's the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I wish you the very best.
Tatiana?
Thank you, Rupert, very much for everything what you give. It's very valuable. I know when I reach peace and quietness and stillness inside. And I could say and call it quiet joy. But I have a question to you. What do you call happiness?
Tatiana, happiness is one of those words that can only be defined in circular ways. What is happiness? It is joy, completion, fulfillment, absence of lack. But these are just other ways of they're just synonyms for happiness. Do you need me to define happiness? Do you not know for certain what the experience of happiness is? Do you really need me to define it?
I understand happiness in the regular kind of character happiness.
But that's the only happiness I talk about, Tatiana. I'm not talking about some mystical, extraordinary happiness. I'm just talking about ordinary, regular, everyday happiness, the only happiness there is.
Yes, and what I think, I feel that I don't have enough of it. Regular happiness.
When you say, I don't have enough of it, tell us about that I.
Yes, I totally understand this.
It was a question.
Yes,
it was a question. You say, I don't have enough of it. But tell us about the I that doesn't have enough happiness.
The character. My character doesn't have enough happiness. I see myself like a persona somewhere.
No, but you say, I see myself
Yes.
as a persona. Don't tell us about the persona, because the persona is what you see. You say, I see the persona. Tell us about I.
I identify with...
No, don't tell us about what you identify with. Tell us about I. That's very good. That's very good.
Yes.
You were just about to spoil it. Stay there. I asked you about I. You made a few false starts, so I interrupted you. I apologize. Because you started telling us about what I sees and what I knows and what I identifies with. And I asked you about I, and you went, I could see, we could all see. You went deeply into I. And you fell silent. That's it. Go there. That's where you'll discover all the joy and the peace that you have ever longed for. Then you won't need anyone to define happiness for you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Tatiana. Vincent, hello. Just wait one moment, you're still muted.
Unmute your mic, please, Vincent.
Can you hear me now?
That's it. That's good. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for taking my question. My question is this. All spiritual teachers point to the same thing, which is to realize that the self, the entity, is an illusion. Okay, and this is how I live as a self, which means how do I then search for the truth when I'm starting from the premise of an illusion? How can the illusion seek?
Vincent, the important thing to understand in the context of your question is that an illusion is not something that is not real. Very often people think the separate self is an illusion in the sense that it doesn't exist or it is not real. This is not true. An illusion does exist. An illusion is real. It's just not what it appears to be. In other words, all illusions have a reality to them. My face, for instance, is an illusion in the sense that it's not really, the face that you are looking at is not really made of flesh and bones and hair and skin. And it looks as if it is. When you reach out your hand and touch it, you touch its reality, relatively speaking, the screen. So there is a reality to my illusory face. Now, the separate self that most of us believe and feel ourselves to be is real. We all feel that I am real. But the belief that what I really am is something temporary, finite, and separate, that is an illusion. So how do you find the reality of the illusory self? Exactly the same way that you find the reality of my illusory face. How do you find the reality of my illusory face? You touch the stuff my face is made of. You find the screen. In other words, you go deeply into the appearance of my face. How do you find the reality of the illusory self? You go into yourself. You look inside yourself. All day long you say, I'm getting up, I'm having a shower, I'm eating breakfast, I'm traveling to work, I'm doing my emails, I'm looking after my family. It's always I, all the way through your day. You're referring to yourself. I is the constant factor that runs through all your experience. Everything else changes. You're not always having a shower or eating breakfast or going to work, but you are always yourself. Even when you were a 5-year-old boy, you referred to I. And the 6-year-old boy, I. And the 7-year-old boy, I. It's been I, all through your life. What is that thread that runs consistently present throughout your life? That is the reality of all the temporary thoughts and feelings, actions and relationships that you have allowed yourself to become qualified by. So discard all those temporary qualifications, the thoughts, the feelings, the activities, the relationships. What do I mean when I say I? and allow that question to take you into your being. And if you go deeply into your being, there you will find the reality of the illusory self. And that going deeply into your being is what's called meditation or self-inquiry in the Eastern tradition, and prayer or the practice of the presence of God in the Western tradition.
So the illusory self is real.
Absolutely.
But the belief is what is not this.
The illusory self is composed of two elements: the true and only self of intimate, impersonal, infinite being, and a series of thoughts and feelings. So the series of thoughts and feelings clothe infinite being, God's being, and makes it seem to be a finite being, a human being, a person, a man. So the person is really God's infinite being, the only being there is, clothed temporarily in human experience. So the separate self has these two elements: the true and only self of infinite being, plus layers of experience that seem temporarily to qualify it. All that is necessary is to drop the temporary qualifications, the clothing, the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the relationships, and just emphasize being. That's the reality of the illusory self. Intimate, impersonal, infinite, self-aware being.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Vincent.
Yeah.
Hello, Anne.
Hi, Rupert. So a while ago, you talked about desire coming from a sense of fullness and no longer from a sense of lack. And the question that arose then was, okay, if you're awakened, doesn't mean your body you're never going to need to drink water or eat food or on some warmer clothing.
Yes,
and so that seems like that would be from a sense of lack. So the first part is just trying to understand how that is not feeling like a sense of lack.
The sense of lack pertains to your body, not to yourself.
Okay.
Your being
actually,
doesn't lack anything, but your body needs some water.
Okay. So then, as I was sort of waiting for my turn to come up, I realized that this was another question. I'm in this place where the thinking mind is kind of saying, if I can just be convinced that all of this stuff is true, then I will abdicate and I won't keep trying to figure it out. But every little thing every little objection, something that doesn't make sense, I need to have that satisfied before I'm willing to sort of step down, because it feels like if I step down and this stuff is not true, then I will be unsafe. I'm not doing my job as protecting myself.
Don't step down. Don't dismiss or disregard your objections and your questions. Don't say to yourself, as you said to us earlier, if I was convinced, then I would drop all these objections. No, it's the other way around. attend to all these objections. And when you have attended to all of them, you will be convinced not by anybody else, not by a teaching or a teacher, but by the truth of your own experience. So I salute your objections and your questions and your thinking. Attend every objection every time the mind says, "Oh, but what about this?" Like you did with your question. You're talking about not having any desires, but I feel hungry sometimes. That seems to be a contradiction. Ask the question. Hopefully, the answer will clear up that particular objection. But then the next objection will appear. Attend to it. Explore it. Try to find the answer to it. Do whatever you need to do to find the answer to it. Explore your own experience, read about it, ask questions about it until you're satisfied for yourself. Don't believe what anybody tells you. Even if the Buddha himself were to materialize in your life and tell you this is the right answer, you should doubt him. Respect what he says, take it as a possibility and explore that possibility in yourself. And a good teacher will never try to convince you of anything. In my opinion, a good so-called teacher will be someone who gives you the tools, who inspires you, but also who gives you the tools to make this exploration for yourself. So you come to your own understanding, your own recognition. And if you're convinced by anything, it's by your own experience. So keep doubting, keep being skeptical, keep questioning, keep thinking. And in time, as your objections get answered in your own experience, this, the thinking, at least that part of your thinking that was involved in your objections will die down. The thinking that was involved in satisfying the frustrations and the anxieties and the neuroses of the separate self will die down. But it doesn't mean that thinking will come to an end. Thinking will continue in the service of creativity. For instance, in a conversation like this, we are thinking, we are using thought, but we are using thought in the service of truth and love and beauty. We're not using thought in the service of the separate self. So don't be down on thinking. Elevate thinking.
Okay.
Use thinking in service of love and understanding.
Great. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, Anne. Rohan, hello.
Hello, Rupert. Thanks for everything. I'm a thinker, so I've been interested in these matters for about 2 years, and my question is, I'm looking more in this sort of outward-facing path now, and I kind of find a certain attraction to embodiment and the shaking loose of these remnants of that separate sense or a separate self. My question is twofold, I guess. How do you feel about these sort of practices in general, like Tantra and embodiment and yoga? I live in Berlin, and there's endless amounts of cacao ceremonies. Some are deeper than others, or you can go there and bark at other people like animals, for example, or with the idea, if I hold this consciousness, to release some of these tensions and traumas. So that would be the first part. And the second part is, how do we find the balance?
How do we
find the balance in these activities? I guess to say, I perhaps use it as a bit of a block to dive into my own consciousness to sort of
okay.
stop me from getting a job.
Rohan, it's very difficult for me to, when you ask a general question about these practices, for me to comment on them, because they're so numerous and varied that it's very difficult to answer generally to cover all of them. But the basic thing to check with any of these practices is what is their purpose. Many of these practices by themselves are neutral. They can either be appropriated by the ego and used to validate and substantiate it, or they can be used in service of our love of understanding and can be used in the service of realigning the way we feel the body and perceive the world with our new understanding. So I can't comment on the practices themselves. It is the motive behind the practice that is important. And almost any practice, not just formal yoga practice, but almost any activity can be made sacred by our intention. It would be better to wash the dishes with a sacred intention than to practice Kundalini yoga for 8 hours a day with an egoic motive. Out of those two, washing the dishes would be the real yoga.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I sort of lean into that ego element a little bit, and I sort of, the second part was like how to define the balance. Obviously, it's an internal recognition, intuition that I have to use. I don't know if you have
just check. Just check regularly during the day on whose behalf do my thoughts and feelings arise, and in whose service are my activities and relationships engaged. If the answer is the separate self and its train of neuroses and fears and anxieties, then pause. Don't follow the train of thought, feeling, action, or relationship. It will lead to sorrow on the inside and conflict on the outside. But if the answer is these thoughts and feelings, my actions and relationships arise on behalf of and are engaged on behalf of the qualities that are inherent in intimate, impersonal, infinite being, then pursue them. Those activities would be the means by which this understanding communicates itself in society and shares itself in the world. So you just have to check inside, where do your thoughts, feelings, actions, and relationships come from?
Thank you so much, Rupert.
And as St. Augustine said, love and do whatever you want. In other words, if your actions come from this understanding that peace and happiness are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything, then it would be hard to go wrong. Whether you're doing the dishes or doing yoga or taking your kids to school or running your business or cooking dinner. Nice to meet you, Rohan.
Thanks very much.
Bob, hello.
Hi, Rupert. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for all the many videos I have watched over the years of you. Long-time seeker, long-time use of Vipassana meditation, focused, calm. Follow the direction. If a thought comes up, let it go, come back to the breath, etc. Thoughts began coming up that I had to pay attention to. And I realized, well, insight meditation means insight. So all reasons are rationalizations. There's only one thing to do. During meditation, these thoughts come up. You can't love anyone until you can love anyone. In the past year, I've come to realize this is an inquiry practice that is very familiar in many traditions, just asking yourself a question, who am I, or whatever. So my current practice is a practical question. every morning I sit, I simply allow the crazy mind to bring up whatever it will. And I'm sort of not exactly asking a question, but allowing some question to arise, like, why am I feeling upset today? What's bothering me? Is there something annoying me? Do I have a bad feeling? Whatever. And just sort of waiting and waiting. And what will happen is a creative thought will arise, which I experience as extinguishing something that was causing the suffering in that moment about that one thing. At that moment, I can sink into that place of awareness, of calm and peace. When these are particularly strong, they feel like my whole body is melting. And then gradually my normal thinking comes back. What am I going to do today? What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. Go on with my life. And so and these have become more intense so that sometimes when I wake up, I feel like I'm going to die. I feel dread. I feel contracted. I feel horrible. And somewhere I have this faith and trust in this process. And so I just sit with that. And then it will eventually inevitably release, and often with some understanding. Oh, I see. That's what suffering is about. That's what death is about. That's what awareness is about. That's what relationship is about. Okay. But it's driving me crazy.
Okay. Bob, can I suggest a more direct approach? An approach which I would suggest your previous practice has prepared you very well for.
Yes.
You shared your practice with us. You're feeling upset, so you ask yourself the question, what is it that's upsetting me? And that takes you to why do I feel unhappy today? Or why do I feel this dread in the morning? And that question takes you back in your experience to whatever it is that's causing the sorrow, and there's some release and so on. If
some understanding, some
insight.
So a creative thought rather than a obsessive thought.
No, I understand
it. Like you say, then that becomes available as normal knowing.
Yeah.
But it also sort of disappears.
Yes. So your inquiry leads you to some insight.
Yes.
Into the cause of your suffering. So it brings you under understanding. And
yes.
But it doesn't take you to your being.
No. It feels like it does temporarily or briefly.
Yeah. You see, your line of questioning, what is it that is causing me suffering today? The answer is, let's say, it's this particular relationship.
Yeah.
So the question has taken you to an object, an object of your experience, a relationship. Then you go deeply into that relationship, and yes, you may gain some insight or understanding about the relationship, and that will give you a measure of peace. But the question has taken you from the sorrow to a relationship, from one object of experience to another object of experience. It hasn't taken you to the subject of experience. It hasn't taken you back to yourself, which is where the peace lies. You're looking to get to the peace through the understanding of whatever it is that is causing you sorrow. Why not go directly to the source of peace, bypass the cause of your the apparent cause of your suffering, because the apparent cause of your suffering is the cause of your suffering is not really the relationship.
Right, of course.
It's because you've lost touch with your being,
yes,
whose nature is peace.
Yes.
So why not go directly to your being instead of asking the question, what is it that is causing me suffering? Why not ask the question is, who is the self that is suffering? Who am I? When I say I am lonely, don't investigate the loneliness, which is what you're doing now. Investigate the I. I am lonely. I am upset. I am afraid, etc. Always the same I. If you investigate that one, the one you refer to as I, that will take you directly to your being and its innate peace.
I do at times simply ask, who am I? I do try to look I do the headless way thing. Who is here? Who is experiencing this? Who is suffering? I do that as well.
And what happens when you look for that?
And so what happens is I do get to I don't know, and I can sink into I don't know, and that feels.
Bob, are you telling me you don't know yourself?
That's my experience is that I come to a place of blank, unknowing of myself. Yes.
But you know yourself more intimately than you know anything else. You refer to yourself numerous times every day. You've referred to yourself at least 24 times in the last 5 minutes using the word I. I is the one thing you know more than anything else. Don't say, I don't know myself. You know yourself. You're with yourself. Do you not now feel, I am myself? Are you not now having the feeling of being myself?
I'm feeling that I am my suffering.
Yes, exactly. You're having the experience of being yourself. You're knowing yourself. All that's necessary is to go into that feeling of being myself and see what yourself really is. What happens? You take the feeling of being myself. What do you find there?
Nothing.
Nothing objective.
Nothing at all.
Well, there is something that is finding or knowing that nothing at all. When you say, I know nothing, the I is still there. It is you that is knowing the nothing. Therefore, you are not quite nothing. You're not a thing, yes, but you're not just a blank, empty void. A blank, empty void cannot be aware of your experience. A blank, empty void cannot be aware that there is nothing.
Thoughts, feelings, emotions.
No, you're going away from yourself.
I know. I because
so
that's all I.
It's very good, Bob. It's very good. You're doing very well. First of all, I asked you about yourself. You traced your way back. You came to this blank, empty nothing.
Yes.
Then I pointed out, if you can claim that there is a blank, empty nothing, you must be there aware of it. And I could see, I think we could all see that you were going even deeper. You were going back behind that last veil, the blank state of nothing. And at that moment, you were touching your true nature, but then you lost confidence and you started talking about your thoughts and feelings again.
Yes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, okay, that's natural. But just go back. Don't stop at the blank, empty void. That's something that you know. Who is the one that knows that? I am. What is this I? Go there, stay there, be that, rest there, as that. Exactly. It was nice to meet you, Bob. I wish you the very best.
Thank you for your efforts, Rupert. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will try to hear your words and realize who I am.
John, hello.
Hey. So I had an experience, this kind of just like this lightning bolt kind of come through me. And it was just like these 3 words, like, I am me. And I guess 1, what was that? And 2, I guess, what does that mean? And kind of after that experience, it felt like I became kind of more contracted and like, I don't know, like smaller. And then now I'm kind of starting to open up, but it was very much like a phase of contraction after that.
I am me.
Yeah, just like a lightning bolt came through me.
Yeah.
Just, I am me.
That's a very profound insight, John. Perhaps you don't yet quite understand how profound an insight that is.
No.
In the I am me or I am I. It's what God says to Moses in the Old Testament. I am that I am. I am only I. I am only I. There is nothing in me other than myself. There is nothing in my being other than my being. And as such, my being is indivisible, unlimited, without parts, whole, perfect, complete. Really, that experience, that's why you describe it as a, what did you say? It was like a lightning bolt that...
Yeah, just like a lightning bolt through my body.
It is like a lightning bolt. It's a crack in your sense of yourself, through which for a moment you were taken to eternity. You were taken to your true nature. And the reason you describe it as a lightning bolt is because you, even if you don't yet have the right interpretation for it, you realize how profound an experience it was. And you're right. It's not like just a little intuition you've had. This was like a crack in your sense of yourself. And in that crack, this glimpse of your true nature took place. And then the crack closed again. And now you're now seeking an interpretation for that experience. And rightly so, John. You should be. So you're doing the right thing. In that moment, you experienced, I am only I, infinite being, I'm only infinite being, that I'm not qualified by any experience. I'm unqualified, unlimited, indivisible, unharmable. So that's that experience is like a call from your innermost being, inviting you, asking you, actually demanding, because it was so powerful, demanding you to explore who is this I that is only me, that isn't anything else. It's not any of my thoughts. It's not any of my feelings, my actions, my relationships, my body, my history, I is just I. What is this just I? Just being. I am only what I am. That if you discover that, John, that is the most important discovery that one could ever make. And all the great religious and spiritual traditions are directed towards this discovery of what I essentially am. Because when we discover what I essentially am, we discover what everything essentially is. So it is to answer this question that all the religious and spiritual traditions and their practice and their numerous practices have evolved over the centuries just to answer this question. So it's good that you've been shaken by this question, and I would encourage you, keep exploring it until you're satisfied, until you have discovered what this I is that I only am. It's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, thank you, Rupert.
Thank you, John. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you, Rupert, and thank you, everyone. And apologize for those that still have hands up. We have come to the end of our time with Rupert, and thank you, Rupert, for being an important part of this conference and for sharing your wisdom with all of us. I dropped Rupert's speaker page in the chat for you, and you can click and find out more about Rupert, and his website also is there. And Rupert, have an awesome weekend for your retreat, your Vedanta retreat, and thank you for being here.
Thank you again, Bill, for inviting me to join you all, and thank you, all of you, for your beautiful